Hello, so here's a question for you. What is your favourite song? Just keep it in your mind. Now, how long is that song? I'm fairly confident that most of your favourite songs are at least 2 minutes in length, since I seriously doubt that many people would come and say, my favourite song is Hitori Goto, and very specifically the short version, and not the full version. Well, if that's your favourite song, then sure, I won't judge you. Claris is always pretty good in my book. The point is that I doubt very many of you would prefer the short version of a song over the long version, if we're talking only about favourite songs. Now, you're probably expecting me to make some sort of comparison with song lengths and OS maps, and I would, but comparing those two is pretty senseless, since a song on its own is very different to an OS map. It's much more plausible and reasonable, in my opinion, to have your favourite map be that of a short version song. Part of the reason being that there are a lot of short version and TV size maps in this game, and when I say a lot, I seriously mean a lot. This graph is all nice and interesting, but the absolute first thing you see in this plot is this giant spike above 90 seconds. 90 seconds makes you think TV size maps, which I guess is reasonable. There's a lot of TV size maps in this game, and you've probably played at least one during your time. But we shouldn't just jump to the conclusion that every 90-second map is a TV-size anime map, because that wouldn't be very scientific. So I made the same plots for each genre and language, and to nobody's surprise, yes, most Japanese or anime songs are indeed around 90 seconds in length. Well, why does this game have so many short version and TV-size songs then? Let's take a look at the typical structure of a song. Most songs will have 2 to 3 verses, 2 to 3 choruses, and maybe a bridge or a solo. Most of the time, each verse and each chorus will sound similar to each other, which when reflected onto mapping means using similar rhythms and patterns. In other words, repetition, which, as you know, can possibly lead to staleness. A TV-size song is cut so that there is only one verse and one chorus. It cuts out the parts that get repeated later on, and you're left with a small package that has most of what the song has to offer. The disadvantage being, however, is that it often cuts out the bridge or the solo, which is often seen as the most interesting part of the song. Despite this, TV-size songs have been incredibly popular amongst mappers for years, and there's plenty of reasons as to why. Firstly, because it cuts out the repeated parts of the song. Mappers don't need to risk over-recycling their patterns and creating a stale map. If each section only appears once in a map, there's a lot less chance to repeat something and make it stale. That's a clear plus for those aiming to get their work recognised. The second reason is, well, anime. OS attracts a lot of anime fans for some reason, so there's no mystery as to why the community would want to map songs from their favourite anime. I've already talked about how Japanese songs are ideal for rhythm games, but the third reason as to why TV-sized anime songs are so popular is because mappers are lazy. Making a full map set takes a lot of time and effort, and so the longer the song, the more there needs to be mapped, and the more time and effort it requires. A typical 4 difficulty spread with 90 seconds drain time adds up to 6 minutes of mapping. However, for the same spread on a 4-minute drain time, that is an entire 16 minutes of mapping. And not only is it extra effort on the mapper, it's also extra effort on the people modding and checking the map during pending too. So those who just want to get their work out into ranked with as little effort as possible will resort to mapping shorter songs. But not just any old short song, they want Japanese anime short songs, because usually a shortened version is already made for them. If I wanted a short version of a typical pop song, then I'd most likely have to cut it myself and to make sure it all fits and such. Whereas for anime, shortened versions already exist since they had to air at some point, so they're pretty easy to get a hold of. Looking at the plots for genres, this backs up the theory, since rock and pop songs have their peaks over the 3-minute mark, which is what you would expect for full-length songs. So TV-size anime are so popular because mapping them is the path of least resistance when it comes to obtaining the songs, mapping them, and many people on this game just like their anime, which then means we see less full-length songs being mapped in comparison. However, things may or may not change with difficulty spreads and song length sometime soon, but I do have my own opinions on map spreads that will need its own video, so my talk on this will have to wait. So, the game has a lot of short version songs for maps. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, short songs and long songs have their pros and cons, and not just for OS, but for pretty much every rhythm game. Make it too short and it's an underwhelming experience for casual players and not enough of a challenge for competitive players. Make it too long and it may be too repetitive and stale for casual players and too frustrating for competitive players, as well as inducing fatigue in both kinds of players. There should therefore be a good balance between not too long to be tiring and not too short to be boring. What is the ideal length of song then? Well, we could look at how the industry cut their songs for rhythm games, so we shall. I grabbed 211 songs from 4 different rhythm games and looked at the average length of those songs. The results were as follows. Taiko no Tatsujin had the shortest length of average song, being about 1 minute and 45 seconds over 25 songs. Most, if not all songs, appear to be cut versions that faded out at the end. Sounds of Voltex 4 had an average of 1 minute and 57 seconds over 65 songs, and Beatmania 2DX25 had an average of 2 minutes and 1 second over 50 songs. It's worth noting that these 2 games are both made by Bemani, who are Konami's music game division. The lengths from these 2 games also have a low standard deviation, or in other words, a tight spread of lengths, leading me to believe that they intentionally aim for 2 minutes. Guitar Hero 3 has by far the longest average length of song, being about 3 minutes and 55 seconds over 71 songs. This game doesn't bother with cutting songs short, and as a result has a very high standard deviation, or a large spread of lengths. This is also the only Western game that I looked at. Guitar Hero seems like a game that focuses on getting classic songs into the game and not cutting them up for maximum player enjoyment, whilst the Japanese games seem to intentionally choose or cut their songs to be around 2 minutes in length. I'm not 100% sure why it's 2 minutes, maybe some boffins at their R&D decided that 2 minutes was the best balance of tiring versus boring. There may be some research that has gone into this, but I've tried looking around and I can't seem to find anything. It is worth noting also that the plots for video game and instrumental songs in OS also have their peak above the 2 minute mark. But are 2 minute tracks favoured by rhythm game players? Well, the answer is probably different per game, so for now let's look at the most favoured lengths for OS only. So, story time. A little while ago, a younger mapper approached me asking for a disqualification on their map, with the reason that cutting this song wasn't right. I went ahead and gave it the old broken heart, and the thread was met with overwhelming support for the mapper's decision. So, maybe people do want their full-length songs over shortened ones. To find an answer, I recently put out a poll on Twitter asking about preferred song lengths, and over half the responses said that they prefer full-length maps, while a smaller but still significant chunk of others preferred shortened versions. I was also brought to the attention of a poll that was set on the forums for a similar question. The difference for this poll, however, was that you could tick multiple options, which kinda makes things a little more difficult to deal with, but what can you do? In this poll, 2 to 3 minutes received the most votes, whilst 1 to 2 minutes came close behind. The results of the forum poll seem to be fairly different to that from the Twitter poll, although you could consider the dates of when these polls went out and the different kinds of people they may have reached. Even still, there's a clear consensus for the preference of songs over 2 minutes in length. Since there's an overwhelming number of short version maps, it makes sense that there may be more vocal voters for the rarer kind of map. People will want the stuff that's in demand, I guess. Since this is basically a popularity vote though, we may as well examine some more objective data. Here is a plot of plays per difficulty versus the song length, and since the default bundle maps dominate the play count stat-wise, those have been taken out of this result. The maps at the top of the plot have their own reasons for being so popular, so we'll just count the number of difficulties over a certain amount of plays. Starting from 1 million plus plays, it appears that the 1 to 2 minute range has the most maps that meet this criteria. But remember that there's a large amount of these kinds of songs compared to other lengths, so we should expect this. However, when we raise the bar to 2 million plays, the gap between short and long songs becomes smaller, and at 3 million, full-length songs are the more popular map. So it seems there are more full-length songs for the super popular maps, and if we look at the number of favourites, a similar situation also happens. In both cases, it also appears that there aren't too many anime maps in the upper right region of the plot, compared to those from video game and electronic genres. So it's fairly safe to say that a lot of players would rather play full-length maps over cut versions, although there is still a sizable number of people who enjoy the cut stuff. The amount of full songs to short songs is disproportionate to what the players seem to prefer though, unfortunately. What have we learned then? Well, people like their full-length maps, I guess. Even if the short version songs are easy to map or play, there is a clear demand for the experience of full-length songs. So basically the moral is, well, what I wrote on the map I disqualified, I guess.
Welcome to us. Click the circles.